right, welcome back for another episode of Dollar Bin Digging. This is the video and article that I do for comicbookinvest.com where I talk about those comics you can probably still find tucked away in those cheap boxes, those discount bins, those dollar boxes at your LCS, flea markets, yard sales, half-price books, wherever you're doing your cheap comic hunting. These are some books I think you should keep an eye out for while you're out there digging. Based off of some of the recent news, rumors, announcements, things going on in the movies, TV, and most importantly, things going on in the actual comics that came out this week or so. Hopefully you're enjoying this series as well as everything else here on the channel. Please let me know what you think in the comments down below. Make sure that you like, you subscribe, you hit the alert button so you don't miss anything. Keep telling your friends so we can keep growing the channel. And if you want to see this week's selection of books, just hang on for a few seconds after the intro and I will be right back. All right, well, let's get to it. But this week, we will not be starting off with comics. No. In honor of Thunderbolts coming out last weekend, this week, let's start off with the movies, right? Let's talk about some things going on in the movies. And here's one news article that kind of ties in with the film Thunderbolts or New Avengers, now that we all know what the official title has become with the asterisks. But Thunderbolts producer hints that Geraldine Viswanathan's, I don't know if I'm saying her name even close to right, will indeed become Songbird. So basically, if you saw the film, Julie Louis-Dreyfus, Elaine Bennis from Seinfeld, her sidekick or her number two or understudy, if you will, or the character of Mel, she is actually named and will eventually become Songbird, and that's what the producer is confirming. It was teased in the film. I mean, apart from her name just being Mel, and that is the name of the character of Songbird, Screaming Mimi before that, it was teased in the film, as you can see here with this brooch that she wore that was actually a songbird. So that was the kind of tease that maybe eventually it'll be revealed that she does have powers and she will be in play for something more in the MCU going forward. I don't know. At least that's what the producer is teasing and that's what they're saying. Who knows if this will ever come to fruition? Point being, let's just talk about the character while we're here. So Melissa Gold, Songbird, again, cast here. She was part of the original Thunderbolts squad that was undercover villains, if you will, back in the 90s. So as Songbird, her first appearance was in that Incredible Hulk issue 449. It's been a popular book as of late thanks to the movie, despite the fact that the movie is no longer called Thunderbolts. It's called New Avengers, thus putting the kibosh on all the people who are investing in this book. Well, actually, I don't know why it would. I mean, realistically, you shouldn't be investing in a book just because it shows up in a movie anyway, because that is short-term and the movie will eventually leave screens. And then what? So it is what it is. Point being, you're still not going to find this Thunderbolts book in dollar bins. Most likely. It'll be a hard ask. It'll be a tough find for you because this book has been pricey for a while now. And when I say pricey, it can range anywhere from $20 all the way up to $100. And it's taken that ride over the last few years all over the place. That said, the character appeared before this, though. This was her first as Songbird, which was the moniker she took when she was pretending to be a hero, and eventually we did become a hero. But that's being said, that's that version of the character was introduced here in the Incredible Hulk as part of the Thunderbolts. But before that, she was known as the villain Screaming Mimi, and her appearance there happened way before that Hulk book. In fact, almost 2 decades before. I mean, we're not going to go back to the 70s now. May of 1979 in Marvel 2-in-1, Thing and Deathlock, number 54. She appeared here as a villain, Screaming Mimi, as part of this crew. Granted, minor role, not a big thing here. She's right there. And you can see, hey, Mimi, right there. Cool. That said, even though it's a book from the 70s, it's still not that expensive. So if you go out there looking, you can see, yes, copies have sold for $8 to $15, sure, depending on condition. I mean, that $15 was for a fine copy. But at the same time, you look for auctions, and no one's looking for this book. $3.11 someone won, a fine plus, a 6.5. So in theory, if the people grading these were grading them accurately, a better looking copy sold for $3. You never know. I'm not telling you to go buy these online. I'm telling you to go dig in a box because online, yes, they're asking 10, 15, $20. Once again, depending on condition. I'm saying this is a 2-in-1 book that while you're flipping through those old school Marvels in the boxes and a lot of those reprints, etc., these 2-in-1s with the thing get mixed in there and you never know. It could get overlooked by a dealer or a shop and they just throw it out with the cheap stuff and maybe you score it for, for only pennies. That's all I'm saying. Now, that was the news story that got me thinking about Thunderbolts. But a couple other things happened in the actual movie. Some rumors and other things I saw online, people mentioning that we could pay attention to as well, including this character. So from The Wire, you guys remember, Bunk from The Wire, but in the movie he's Congressman Gary. Has a lot of interactions with Bucky on the Congress side of things. It was kind of our look into the political side of the film. But the character also could have ties to the comic books, because Congressman Gary could indeed be Leonard Gary, who was a congressman in the comics, who was actually a mutant. Yeah, mutant. Who knows if this character is going to end up being a mutant and will have ties to with the mutants when the X-Men are introduced. Who knows if they're going to go down that route? Not sure. But if you want to go and look at the comics, you can see Leonard Gary's first appearance here in Secret Avengers number 13, back during the Fear Itself run. So this is May of 2011, and Beast is friendly here with our congressman, as you can see, Leonard Gary. And again, I think he had some powers where he could make statues move or something weird like that. I don't remember completely. It's been a while. Point being, he was a mutant. Don't know if they'll go that route in the MCU, but this is the book you would look for if you're interested in the character. I couldn't even find any recent sales of this thing, but listings, it's only looking for $2, $4, $5. It's a very cheap book. No one's even listing it as the first Leonard Gary. It's just another Secret Avengers book in the run, as far as anyone else is concerned, which is prime digging for you if you want to go find a book for like $1, just to grab for fun. It doesn't even have to be about anything. You can just grab it for fun or point it out to your friends while you're digging. It's like, hey guys, you know what this is? This is the first congressman from the Thunderbolts movies in this book. And you throw it down and you show off, and it's only $1. That kind of thing. Now, with that said, one more item about the movies that we're going to go into, and that's OXE. If you saw the film, you saw, getting her name, DeFontaine, the Allegra. I always, there's like so many names. She has so many names, I always lose track. So I just keep calling her Elaine. Point being, Julie Louis-Dreyfus in the film has ties to OXE. She's a big stockholder. She's trying to cover her tracks. I'm not trying to ruin the whole movie or anything, but the group, the company OXE, which some have speculated could have ties to Hydra by twisting the logo over on its side. It does kind of look a little bit like an octopus on its side. But here's the logo in the film. And again, we know the places. It's mentioned all over the place. OXE, it has been introduced in the comics. It's only been a little while. This isn't an old team or old group or by any stretch. This was a recent introduction just a year or so ago. But it's interesting that they already included it in the MCU, as it contains two again, I want to say her comic book name, but I just keep fumbling all over it for some reason in my head. Point being, in the most recent volume of Thunderbolts, before the new one comes out, because we know actually, they've already rebranded the new Thunderbolts comic as being a new Avengers book, so I guess I could say in the most recent issue and rendition of the Thunderbolts back in December of 2023. It only ran like 4 or 5 issues, I think. But inside this, we do see the ties here to OXE. So that is something. Again, you see also Bucky and her, Val, kind of button heads here. And we see Val's connections to OXE in the comics. And then it is also portrayed out there on screen. This is another book that, again, is not expensive. Yes, it is a recent run for Marvel. So maybe you find it in like a half off cover kind of place, $2. I don't know. Point being, online, it sells for around $4. Copies listed $2.69, $3.74, basically at a discount, because it does have a $4.99 cover price. So all the listings and those sales are basically undercover. So this is the kind of discounted book that you could probably go and find if you wanted to. So that's just a couple of things I got into thinking about with Thunderbolts, the film, which I did enjoy quite a bit. It surprised me. I didn't know what exactly to expect. I knew it would be fun, but honestly, it was better than I had even anticipated with that. And I was looking forward to it. But go check it out if you haven't seen it already. And hopefully I didn't spoil too much with these comic books and character talk. That said, before we move on to the next bit, I want to remind any of you out there who haven't tried Whatnot yet, use my link below to sign up. Get yourselves a free $15 on your first purchase. Get yourself something nice, no strings attached. You help out the channel. You get something for $15 just by trying out the app if you haven't already. So give it a look. Use the link below. And yeah, $15. Why not? Can't hurt, right? With that said, moving on to comics. So we're usually just talk about the comics here, but I had a couple of movie items to talk about. So now we'll get into the comics for this week, starting off with Marvel over on X-Men. So X-Men 16, we are introduced to this new squad of X-Men. It's like, what is it? X-Men 3K, 4K, or whatever the heck they're called. This team is being introduced. Okay, 3K. That's what it was. I was like, couldn't remember if it was 3K or 4K. But anyway, this team is being introduced to us by this villainous character called Wire. Yes, this kind of a Cable ripoff, even with the name Cable, Wire. You get it? Yes. This guy goes back to the 90s, to Alpha Flight of all places. So Wire, who is, again, just kind of a bootleg Timo Cable. It's the easiest way kind of to explain it. It doesn't have all the history of being a Summers and all that. It's just more of the look and the cybernetic kind of angle and a guy with a big gun. That's all I mean. With that said, in Alpha Flight, back in July of 1992, this is where we first get introduced to Wire, who does have ties to Wild Child in that book and in those storylines. And I think he eventually ends up working with Alpha Flight. I don't remember a lot because I wasn't reading a lot of Alpha Flight back in the day. But I do remember bits and pieces, and here is some of the stuff. And yes, he's just a fuzzy dude with a big gun showing off his sternum bush. And he's not even named in this issue, but that is him at the end of issue 114 as he's hunting Wild Again, book, not expensive. You can find this out there, $2.50, $3, $4. Copies listed, 99 cents, $3, $10. Okay, maybe a pricey copy out there or so. But that would be your first appearance of The Wire. But if you like the cover appearances, as I know with all the Richard Parker Spider-Man talk this past week or two, with his first appearance being on the cover, despite the fact that he's been running around as Spider-Man for the last 3 issues and isn't even in the current issue that he's on the cover for, we can talk about the arguments of cover and what's inside the books all day. I'm not here to argue that. I'm just here to point out what these books are, and you make the decision whether you want to buy them for whatever price you come across them for. I'm just saying this is cheap stuff that you can come across, and maybe you think about it. So not on the cover, The Wire, but inside the guts of the book, issue 114. But if you like the cover appearance, well, get the next issue, because there he is on the front with his name right there, the techno savagery of Wire. So go get this one then. If you don't like the cameo at the end, call it a cameo, call it whatever you want, then go get this one. No harm, no foul. Neither are expensive, so you could probably find both of them for $1. Copies sold $3.58, $9. I was actually surprised to see a $9 sale. There was a $10 sale as well, but that was like for like 4 issues. So that was like a run. So can't really count that. Copies listed are only look for like $3, $3, $5.50. Not an expensive book by any stretch of the imagination. So if you're interested in the character, who knows how much longer he's going to stick around for, but considering he has ties to these new X-Men that are showing up in this book, maybe he hangs around for a few issues and we see a bit more from Wire going forward. I don't know. I don't know what the X-Men's plans are these days. But speaking of X-Men, let's go to one of the solo titles of one of our favorite Merry Mutants and look at Storm. So Storm, issue 8, also new issue out this week. And inside this book, we're reminded of some characters that could be brought back into the fold once again. Yes, not talking about like She-Hulks and the Juggernauts, because, obviously, those first appearances aren't going to be dollar bin worthy, right? Abomination, same thing. I believe we've already covered Armor, Maggot, and Strong Guy recently, so let's look at some of the other ones that I don't think we've covered all that recently. And I'm going to start off here where my arrow is pointing and talk about Gentle, or I can't remember what his name was initially. It was like Nephilim or something. No, I don't know. We'll get to it. Point being, Gentle. A lot of expectations out of this guy for a stretch there. His book got hot for a moment, and his first appearance book was in New X-Men 23. And there was a time this thing popped to like $20, $25. Rumors and speculation, etc. That said, this is also a book from February 2006, and he appears here in a very, very minor role. Not a big role at all, but there he is. Oh, Nezino, whatever. That was what they called him at first, then eventually took the moniker of Gentle. If I'm even saying that right. I'm just reading it phonetically as it looks to me. That said, this book, again, had its moment in the sun, but these days is very cheap. Yes, a copy did sell for $18.50, but at the same time, a copy sold for $2.50 at auction, or $4. Copies listed, yeah, some are looking for $13 to $15, but then there's others that are listed just more in that $5 to $7 kind of range. I'm just saying, go dig in a box and see if you find it for less than even that. You know, could be fun. Could be a fun little find. That said, moving on to the other character I think you saw on the group that I did not highlight yet, and that is Big Bertha over here. She was part of the Great Lakes Avengers back in the day, and even those guys had their moment in the sun. We were getting speculation on TV shows, I think, with ABC Family and Squirrel Girl maybe being introduced, and yes, maybe ties to New Warriors. There was all kinds of talk about some wild characters they might be bringing to TV, but never happened. Big Bertha, though, is a character that does go back, as I said, to the West Coast Avengers appearance of the Great Lakes Avengers. That was in West Coast Avengers 46, another book that at one time got hot. Actually, a few times. It's been on the cycle before. It's come up, hit those $15 to $20 marks for a stretch, falls back down to $10 and under, and so on and so forth. It goes round and round. But this would be, and despite her being on the cover, yes, she is also inside the book here. So we got Big Bertha right there. Currently, this book is on the downswing of the roller coaster ride, as you can see, with copies selling for as cheap as $1.99, $2.70. All right, $7.77, almost $8. Cool. Copies listed $2.50, $2.50, $10 ish. Not an expensive book right now, so it is definitely on the downside of the roller coaster ride, and maybe one day with some more rumors or whatever, could go find itself back on the way up. I'm just saying, look for this old school West Coast Avengers book in a box for cheap, because they're probably back there again, because all that Kang spec of the West Coast books, all of that Vision spec from the West Coast Avengers that we were all digging through just a couple of years ago, most of that stuff has just kind of quieted down. So these things, as collections come into shops once again, they're probably not even bothering going through the West Coast Avengers run, apart from maybe looking for that White Vision book. Outside of that, they'll probably say, it's all right, we'll just keep this in the cheap stuff. All right, sticking with Marvel. We also got the first new issue of Star Wars since the movies, meaning all of the other previous title runs from Marvel that have been dealing with Star Wars has taken place right in between all of the known canon movies. Like, this is what happened between Star Wars and Empire. This is what happened between Empire and Jedi, etc. Now we're dealing with stuff that's taking place after Return of the Jedi. So until we get to more Mandalorian type stuff, and maybe even Force Awakens type stuff, these are the stories we're going to be getting, which we don't know a lot about. So could be interesting. Point being, Star Wars 1 came out this week, and inside we get a callback to a character who's been around a while, and that's Baylor Valance. Or I'm just going to call him Valance because the name of Baylor is kind of silly. Looks like a Terminator, kind of based off of Terminator as far as his look goes in the Star Wars world kind of thing. He is inside this book. He has ties to Han Solo in the past. I believe they studied as Imperial cadets at one point during their histories, etc. But the original comic appearance and the original appearance of this character, who is not from the movies, he's not like a movie first type of guy. He's a comic first guy, and that comes from the Hunter in issue 16 of that original 1977 Star Wars comic run. Granted, yes, it's 1978 this book came out, but it's the 77 run. But in this book, there he is, the Hunter, also called Valance here. His name is Valance, and they added the Baylor, I guess, later. Point being, this is his first. You can find this book. I think there's like a, not Wegmans. I don't want to say Wegmans. The Woolworth version or something. There's a couple of different versions of this book you can find out there, apart from the newsstand, etc. Doesn't matter. They're all pretty cheap right now. Like, this was a book that at one time, because of his ties to that Bounty Hunter comic, where he was kind of featured for a while, he got a little bit of attention. It's kind of died down. Not saying the attention is going to come back just because he showed up in Star Wars 1 this week, but it's still a book to keep an eye out for, because you never know. Maybe we do eventually see him on screen in something. We see something adapted. I don't know. We'll see. Point being, $1.44, $5.74, $6 are some recent sales. Copies listed, looking for $8, $10 to $12. Still not that pricey, but one to keep an eye out for, and worth a pickup if you find a nice copy for cheap. That's my only point. Now, that's the Marvel stuff for the week. And before we get on to DC and the other publishers, just to wrap us up, I just want to remind you all out there, if you need supplies, use my code RENA10 to save yourselves 10% off your order at BCW. Get your bags, your boards, your long boxes, your short boxes, your CGC boxes, top loaders for your comics, top loaders for your cards even. You got pages you need for your cards, binders, whatever you need to keep your comics and collectibles safe. There's probably a product that you can get at BCW, and if you're going to order it, save yourself some money and use my code RENA10 for 10% off. So that out of the way, let's get on over to DC and look at a new release this week, Secret Six, number 3. I've given up on this title personally, just because it's not exactly what I had hoped for. I was a big fan of the original Secret Six run, and while they're trying to tie in some of the original characters with Catman and Deadshot, etc., it's not the same thing. So it's not exactly what I wanted. It's not that it's terrible. It's all right. It's just not what I was hoping it was going to be. That said, in this book, we do get a callback to an old Secret Six member again, though. So maybe they will start gathering my interest as we start seeing more callbacks to the old stuff. Granted, we still haven't seen Scandal or Cheshire or Bane yet, even Ragman. Once we get those characters on board, maybe you got my attention again. But for now, we do have her right here, and this is Jeanette, who was like a, I forget what they call it. She's like an ancient, like a harpy or something. No, banshee. And she's like 100 years old. Looks like a member of the Hellfire Club from the X-Men. I don't know. Weird stuff from the Secret Six back in the 3rd issue of the 2nd volume, I want to say. But 2008, 2009, issue 3. This is what I'm talking about here. And again, you see the squad I'm talking about with Ragman down below, and you got Catman and Bane, etc. But here we go. This is where we're introduced to Jeanette. And pay no attention to the gimp in the background there. But yeah, we do got that guy back there. Here we go with this character. It's not an expensive book either. And she seems to be playing sort of in the background of our current run, not even fully revealed yet. So we'll see maybe in the next issue or two what her plans and her intentions are. But, oh, sorry, I don't have the prices on this one. I didn't need to bother. You know, this is a cheap book. So sorry I didn't update the deck, but it's very cheap. This is just $1 or $2 if you can even find it on its own. You might have to buy it in a lot. But point being, there's your first Jeanette, and then we're going to move on to Two-Face. So Two-Face also wraps up this mini-series this week with issue 6, the final issue. Love this cover. It's really cool with, Two-Face climbing out of Harvey Dent's head here. But at the end of this issue, and kind of throughout the run, we did have mentions and ties to this character here. This newer character, Doubt, in the DC side of things. He's been in the Batman universe for a little while now. He's got the power of like influencing you with his whispers. So it's almost a little bit like a mind control, a little bit of a Purple Man-ish kind of thing. Maybe possibly overpowered, but Batman already dealt with him in an issue when he first appeared. But here he is kind of teasing possibly coming back and just being a little bit of a background character. And again, that character is called Doubt. He's got snake tattoos on his face. Kind of stands out in that way. He first appeared in Batman the Brave and the Bold, that huge, like, oversized $8 run of comics from not that long ago. I mean, this is October 2024, so it's not even a character that's 6-7 months old. But you could still probably find these old Brave and the Bold books, maybe not for $1, because again, it's an $8 cover. Costs the shop at least $4 to buy it themselves, but you can maybe find it at a discount. It's my point. So who knows how cheap you can find it for? I'm saying keep an eye out for it. Multiple covers here, but inside there's a whole storyline, based around this character of Doubt, and he keeps saying Doubt throughout, etc. And you see his powers, and it's a fun little story. Give it a read. But this is him right here in his first appearance. Copies have sold, again, right around that cover price mark, a little less, at about $7. Copies listed, yeah, there could be around the cover price at like $8.70, but then there's some under $5, $5.75. Who knows how cheap you can find it, again, if you go digging out at your shops. But it's just a minor character first. Who knows how big his profile could get, but he does have an interesting power set, like I said, with that whisper. But could it be overpowered? Possibly. But it could make for some interesting storylines down the way. Now, to wrap us up over at DC and sticking in the Batverse, I guess, we're going to go over to Batgirl, which is probably my favorite title running right now, just to read. Never been a huge Batgirl fan, but this has just been a fun read. So I encourage you to go check it out. First story arc has ended after 6 issues. We're starting a new one here with issue 7 with Cassandra looking at her mother's journal, getting some backstory, and in this backstory, getting it more fleshed out, the relationship between her mother and her mother's sister, so basically her aunt. So we're going to get into it here with the character of, well, she's actually had multiple names. I think she's called May in this book, M-E-I, but back in the day, her original iteration, she was called Carolyn Wushan or Wushan. And again, even made a lot of different spellings and changes over the years, a lot of retcons to the name, a lot of retcons in DC as a whole. When you go back to as far back as this goes, this is in the 70s. But Carolyn first showed up before Lady Shiva in March of 1975 in Richard Dragon Kung Fu Fighter issue 2. As you guys know, Shiva shows up, right? It's Lady Shiva, right? In issue 5, I think it is. But here we go. A couple issues before Richard Dragon Kung Fu Fighter. Here she is, Caroline Wu. My name is Carolyn Wu-san, and O-Sensei is my godfather. So there you go. I know what you're thinking. This is, it's Richard Dragon, 1975. It's going to be a little bit pricey, right? No, it ain't pricey. Copy sold for $1.69 at 2 bids. $3 with 4 bids. $4.60. Buy it now at my comic shop. I'm not saying you're going to get it 9.8 copies at these prices, but you can find this book for cheap. Copies listed, $4, $5, maybe $10. Yes, there are some more expensive. You're paying for the grade, but you can definitely find cheap copies out there, and that's the point. First appearance for cheap. Her sister, who again is going to probably be playing a bigger role here in this Batgirl storyline going forward, given the events of the previous story arc. Give it a read. I'm telling you, it's worth it, but we'll see where this thing goes. Now, with that said, I'm done with DC. I got one more book to just quickly talk about before we wrap it up for today, and that is Captain Planet. Now, I have never been the biggest Captain Planet fan. It just wasn't my deal. I remember when this came on Saturday mornings, it was like, okay, I'm done with Saturday morning cartoons now, so I don't need to watch Captain Planet. Again, not for me. I mean, it's more of a 90s creation, too. I started getting a little old, but point being, Captain Planet is back in the comics, and yes, we do have a new comic starting from Dynamite, this, pretty cool Mark Spears cover, but Captain Planet, let's go back and just say, hey, keep an eye out for his original run, because you know what? Anytime a new run comes out, interest goes back to the OG, so go look for the original run. It's only like a dozen issues, and especially the last issue, I think, gets some interest as well. But here we go with the first issue from August of 1991, Captain Planet, the fantastic first issue. You could still find this out there for cheap, and maybe you can make a couple of bucks. But copies could sell for $3.80 or $12. Copies listed, well, about $6, $10. I've seen some pricier, I've seen some cheaper. Depends on condition. Point being, go see what you find at your shop. Go grab a Captain Planet 1. And maybe you do all right if more interest goes back and more nostalgia is awakened with this newer series from Dynamite. I don't know. Just a fun idea of something you can go hunt. And that's the kind of idea behind this whole show. Some scavenger hunt books for you to go and hunt while you're out there digging. And you're digging for those real scores, those real treasures. These are some side items, little side quests that I'm giving you to give you some fun while you're out there digging. And again, show off in front of your friends. That said, thanks for stopping by and checking this out. Hopefully you enjoyed this as well as everything else here on the channel. Please let me know what you think in the comments down below, and I will see you all later with some more content. All right?